late night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
There's like more radio. I'm working on radio.
The best conservative show in America.
Hey, welcome to Freedom Fest again.
Yeah, when is that? Because I'm looking forward to it, actually.
I'm excited. I hope Freedom Fest comes around sometime again soon. We are live at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas, Nevada for Freedom Fest 2015. I really appreciate you guys joining in. We had some great interviews today, some great people today. Glenn Beck and Marco Rubio just wrapped up, Glenn Beck being the keynote, Marco Rubio giving a speech that was not a presidential stump, really, as much as
about the American dream. It was it was an amazing.
It was actually
speech.
a really good speech, and I was talking to a couple people earlier about Marco Rubio, and one of the things that they said is his absolute strength in all of this is his ability to communicate with people, and I really think that kind of showed through tonight. He made some great statements and comments.
He did. I want to. Beck said a lot of good things. He's an excellent speaker. And before we get into Marco Rubio, I want to talk about what Glenn Beck said, because he said something and it hit me to the point where I actually had to tweet it out, and I don't do that. if anybody knows me,
you don't tweet.
I don't tweet. Like, I don't even understand how to turn this thing on half the time, and you guys have to do it for me. But Beck said, and I even wrote it down, and I immediately sent it out. But he said, "We must not remain silent anymore."
Which is a big one.
And that was something that really kind of struck home with me, because you and I don't really remain silent, which is why we started the SHR Network, which is why we did Sackheads Radio, which is why you do Edge of Liberty,
yes,
which is why we have everything that we do. So we don't, but how many people do we talk to on a day-to-day basis that say, hey, you know what, I want to stay uninvolved, or hey, I have, like, everything's okay in my world, I don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
A lot of people have not, and we've talked about this before, don't stand up, and when a lot of people remain silent, that's when you have tyranny that's able to take hold. And so it struck a chord with me. It actually struck a chord with the crowd also, which I was. It was just an amazing.
It was an amazing reaction from the crowd, but again, it's one of those things that people respond to Beck anyways,
right?
But when in this crowd specifically. But those exact words, and the other thing too is, and I wrote it down somewhere, that he tweeted. See, now I'm thinking it's you all of a sudden tweeting things out. Speaking about us in general as a people, is it's natural for us to get even, but we must not. In other words, deal with the problem at hand, but don't get even. Do it because it's right, or whatever the right thing to do. Do it because it's right versus even. And I took a lot to that, because you know what, that is a problem that we have a tendency to have, especially politically. Mm-hmm. Right? We jump to getting even politically on a regular basis.
Right. Like, for example, when Boehner was challenged for his power, what did he do?
He started getting rid of people, right? Started losing appointees to commissions and all other stuff.
Look, I have such little respect for that man anyway, but when that started happening, I lost any small measure of respect I may have had for that man.
Right. No,
and I apologize, not Boehner.
No, Boehner. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was starting to worry about you.
I know, right?
I was thinking maybe you were just out for too long,
got professional
or tired.
for a moment or something. Like, just because we're at Freedom Fest doesn't mean we lose who we are.
Right.
People I think we're getting ready to ask, did we sell out to the man? I don't even know who the man is.
To Chris, maybe? I don't know who the man is.
I don't
either.
understand.
But then Beck brought out some pretty cool things from his personal collection. The original map of the moon that was drawn, which I thought was just awesome.
Oh, see, the bed sheet, the fragment of bed sheet that Abraham Lincoln actually died on, and some of the stains were actually his blood. Just a tremendous piece of history that he was able to bring out, and he was able to loop, a lot of Abraham Lincoln in and what he stood for, and into what he was talking about with our country. But just an amazing speech. If you haven't had a chance to see Glenn Beck in person, I highly recommend it. He's very, very dynamic, very engaging with the audience. If you really enjoy Sac Kids Radio, you'd probably enjoy Glenn Beck to some degree.
Well, he was actually, and not that I thought he was going to be bad, but, I've seen Beck on TV a ton of times, obviously. But he was way better in person. I don't know if it's because it's more personal or what, but it was better than it normally is. I'll say that.
He genuinely cares for this country, and he genuinely feels what it is he's talking about. I mean, I think Beck is a dynamic speaker all the time. I mean, whether it's his radio show or whatnot, he does a fantastic job.
Right.
But seeing him actually in person on the stage and working the stage and everything else, it was just a tremendous to see that. So that was great. And then Marco Rubio.
Yeah, I was impressed with Marco Rubio.
I really liked him before, and I love him. I may want to have his child.
I hope not.
Not literally.
Not that
although
it's not legal.
It's okay now.
Right,
because the Supreme
okay
Court
now.
said that that's okay, but I don't think he'd go for it.
No.
Not that I would either. Just make that perfectly clear. CLEAR. What?
Nothing. Go on.
What?
Nothing. Go on.
Okay. But he talked, like you said, he did not give a speech, a presidential speech.
No.
He was talking about the American dream, because that's what this conference is about. It's about the American dream, Freedom Fest 2015, and he talked about that as instead of giving just a regular, presidential stump or pitch. And
Right.
First of all, I was impressed that he did that. He was able to stick to what the theme of the conference is.
Very well, too.
But then he was able to wrap in kind of the presidential shtick, so to speak. And he talked about how the road to the American dream has gotten narrow. It used to be the road to the American dream was wide and it could be traveled, and that it had been narrowed. So how do we get back to that? And he brought two things. He mentioned two things very specifically to bring the American dream back and to make the road more easily traveled for folks going along that path. One was the global economy.
Right.
And two was technology.
Right.
And he spoke very briefly on each point, which I thought was great. And his ideas were amazing. He talked specifically about our policies in order to make America globally competitive. He talked about how, look at the close of World War II in the 19th century or 20th century, we did not have really a global competition for us. You had countries that were recovering from World War II. America was in decent shape, so basically you could raise taxes. He said not a good idea, but you could do it
minimally.
And he said you could have some regulations, not a good idea, but you could do it, and our economy we wouldn't suffer too badly because we weren't competing with anybody on a global market. But today we are competing with people, and he said for the best ideas, the best talent, the best everything else, and we're doing that with people all the way on the other side of the world, and so we have to make it easier to compete in that global economy. He talked specifically about taxes,
yes,
and why that's important, and he talked specifically about regulation reform,
yes,
which was amazing. The second thing he talked about was technology and giving our people the skills to compete in the 21st century. He talked about how there's this people are told, or students are told from all the way through school, that the only way they're going to amount to anything is to go to a 4-year university and get a degree. And he made a great quip about people will go to degrees and take out loans and get massive student debt, majoring in ancient Greek philosophy.
Yeah,
and he said that was a skill that hasn't been needed in over 2,000 years.
Exactly.
Great quip. But he talks about, hey, what about our trade schools?
Right.
Why are our kids being told that only the kids that are not very intelligent go to trade schools to learn to be a mechanic or to do a skill? He said, and that's not the case. He said, actually, the very smart kids that do that because they know they're going to have a good-paying job with minimal investment,
right,
in terms of they're not going to have a whole lot of debt to do this. He also talked about packaged learning and why these 4-year universities basically certify themselves. But why is it that you have a single mother? He used that as a great example. Why is it she has all this life experience and gets no credit for that and then has to sit down and listen to a professor talk about things that she's been doing within her life. So how do we get people that credit for their life experiences and package learning? Hey, if you take a class here and a class here and you have work experience here, then package that together and get your degree because you obviously have that experience.
The other one he used is, why should a soldier who spent 4 years in the Middle East have to come back and sit through a class with the Middle East history professor of Middle East culture or something like that?
Yeah, who's never been to the Middle East.
Who's never been to the Middle East, right. No, I think that's something that's amazing, and I think he nailed it. I would love to see education go that route. The packaged education is a great, and the good, like he said, you may get this price at this university for this class, but this university for this class, and then you can do 3 online courses and et cetera, et cetera. But why shouldn't that all count, right? There should be, yes, there needs to be a level of education involved.
Right, or your work experience. Why does your work experience not count for that right there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big deal. So all of those things were very positive, and like you said, it met the Freedom Fest kind of overall ideals. It wasn't a presidential speech, but again, the people, I thought, reacted amazingly to him. He had a couple of great, he was comical, he was funny, but he was also extremely
handsome. Handsome, I think, is the term we were going to look
say
for.
Connected to the crowd.
Oh, you were.
I
apologize.
I think the crowd connected to him, and
because he was handsome. Thank you. You just brought it full circle. Thank you.
Because he was handsome.
What?
Yes, that was exactly it.
Thank you.
Amazing story, and everyone knows the story, I think, about his parents to a point, but to hear his parents' story in depth, coming here from Cuba, and making something of themselves versus just kind of doing what's easy and working as bartenders, and then his mother had a different job, sometimes out in Las Vegas, and then back down in Florida. So to talk about that, I think, is important, because one of the things that we miss on a regular basis, I think, in this country is the history of the immigrants who came here right and did everything right and earned their right.
And he's a success story. He talked about. He said, "Hey, so I had poor immigrant parents that were coming down. Right, I had a mother who worked several different jobs. She was stocking at the Kmart. She was working the front desk at a hotel. And I had a father who worked in a particular industry, and he said, he goes, they were poor. We didn't have a lot of money. We never lived in a mansion. He said, and you put that into a computer, and it spits out liberal Democrat. So he talks about his life experience and kind of how that plays in, but he's able to connect to the American people on a fundamental level,
and did a really good job.
He did a great job. And one other thing he said before he closed it out, he said something to the effect of, "Big government has never been a good idea. It's always been a bad idea, and in the 21st century, it's a horrible idea." Right. So, and of course, that got a big applause. So, excellent day.
It was a great day. I'll tell you what, we've had some really fun interviews. We've had some really engaging interviews. And I really, really think that tomorrow is going to be another great day. And listen, if you're listening at home and you've never been to Freedom Fest, I'm going to give them a free plug right now, because this event has been outstanding. The exhibitors, the speakers, the groups, the people, SHR Media, we've all been pretty outstanding.
We have been outstanding. We have been accused, and you're going to hear this again next Wednesday for our show, I guarantee it. We have been accused of being the frat boys
of Media Row.
And
we've actually been very well behaved for us.
We have, but we've
there's
been very
always
active.
Been a crowd too, and we have been very active. But every time we've been fortunate to be surrounded by some awesome people while we're here, and as a result, nothing but a crowd draws a crowd, and it's very, very true. And again, I know I said this last night, but I got to give hats off to Chris Peranto, who hung around today.
Again, yeah.
It didn't have to, right?
Nope.
Yesterday was the event.
Yeah.
And then continued to sign books.
Right.
Through the day, and even said, if I leave for a little bit, text me, and I'll come back and do the signatures for the people and get the people back. And he met with every one of them yet again.
No, he really does. Look, he is such an amazing man. He really is. Just a genuine good guy. Like, he wants because the suggestion was made at one point, not by us, but somebody else. Hey, why don't you just sign books and then sell it? He goes, no. He goes, I want to meet these people.
Right.
He goes, I want to sign their names. I want to personalize it to them. He goes, I just want to sign some books and let them, buy some signed books.
And that contact, but to him, see, He may have a hard time running for office if he ever chooses to, because of media appearances or whatever.
Not from us.
Not from us.
Not from us.
But I'll tell you what, if he ever chooses to run for office, I think he could be greatly successful.
He would be amazing.
Because
Just amazing.
his interpersonal skills are beyond.
Look, even with his his personality and everything, I think he'd be able to overcome that.
Oh,
because
yeah.
people would see what a genuine person he is and the things he does. Like I said, that personal touch that he genuinely wants that. That's no PR person telling him to do that. That's legitimately him wanting to do that, and that's going to transcend any media trying to slam that. Would make them look like humongous. Are we on terrestrial radio?
Could be.
Okay,
Jerks.
Humongous jerks.
Absolutely.
I was going to say creeps, but I don't want to mess it up. So look, tomorrow, real brief, I want to plug. We have a couple interviews. 10 o'clock, we have Joel Griffith from the Heritage Foundation.
That's going to be a good one.
That's going to be a very good one. We also have tomorrow Yaron Brook from Ayn Rand.
Yep, Ayn Rand Institute.
Not Iran. That's a country, and there's bad
Rand
stuff going
Institute.
there. Ayn Rand Institute.
And a lot more through the course of the morning. So check us out, shrmedia.com. Check out the Spreaker page. Get all caught up in these great interviews. We are
out of here.
We are out of here. It's the end of the broadcast day for us. It's time for us to sit, have a relax. No,
we have one
of the Freedom Fest, wonderful Freedom Fest
sitting
employees.
Here.
Are you going to come over and say hi, Naran? She said she has
said,
something else she has to do right at this moment.
Her microphone's not working. Sacco, can you even get that right? Here she wants to promote her event, and her microphone's not even working right now. This is ridiculous.
You know, you're supposed to produce music and sound and all that stuff. Come on.
Look,
fine, play the music.
No, the Freedom Fest has been an outstanding event. We highly encourage you to join us next year. Please
Absolutely.
Come out here, check them out, check out the site.
Check us out
What
tomorrow.
a day. Check
right
us out
here
tomorrow.
On the SHR Media
Check us
Network.
out in photographs. We're pretty good to look at.
We are handsome.
We're
let me
not.
tell you.
We have faces
handsome.
for radio.
Can we play the music
awesome.
now? The night is over.
Hey, Sacco, there's only so much we can say here.
There we go.
Late night conservative talk show in America. Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
Into the silo.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.